Ahoy, mateys. This is Caitlin, aka Queen She-Wolf.
Hey, this is Jamie, aka JD Star 88.
And today, since we are wrapping up the month of March, and March is Women's History Month, we are talking about Charlie, along with other famous female pirates in our world. But mainly, we are going to be talking about Charlie for the Charlie chaps as well.
Hey, Charlie!
Yay, Charlie! So Charlie, of course, she never said how she ended up. First, she started on Bob's ship, and she never really said how she got there. Actually, of course, I think they said, she said to Bob, "Oh, I was a scrappy young lass in trouble, and you got me out of trouble." And we're wondering, like, well, what trouble was that? So yes, and I'm going to finish up the walkthrough with Ed, and then I'm going to do a male MC with Charlie. So that's coming up next. So I got to dive into more of Charlie's history. But yes, what do you have to say about Charlie?
What is there not to say? She's like probably the best female love interest I think Choices has created, honestly.
And a lot of people do think that she is the prettiest.
Oh, she's stunning.
She is pretty. She's very pretty. And I gotta say, I will give credit to Maggie and Octavia. I mean, they're female pirates as well, even though Octavia should just walk down the aisle with Bob.
Fuck Octavia.
I know, fuck Octavia. But Maggie is pretty good at her job too. But I feel like with Charlie, of course, she makes her presence known. And I know in the walkthrough that I did with the female MC and Ed, female MC, MC can ask, what's it like being a woman on ship? And Charlie says, well, it depends on the ship. And she said many times she had captains that would say that she's bad luck. And then the MC says, they don't really believe that, do they? And she says, oh, yes, they do. But I guarantee you, they don't say it to my face again.
Yep.
They don't say it to my face. And you can see with Charlie that she is a woman in a male-dominated field, to the point where she's just like, the way men do things, it's not always the best. Like when Ed and Bob were dueling it out, she says, men, it always comes down to swords. This is what happens. This is what happens when a man is in charge, when men are in charge. Or with Octavia, when Bob's crew and Ed's crew were fighting the Navy, Charlie did say to Octavia, want to show these men how to do it? Something like that. Let's show these men. Yeah. So with Charlie, and of course I did do research on female pirates in our history. And I'll start with, of course, with Anne Bonny. We'll start with Anne Bonny because she was mentioned in the Distant Shores sequel. And I did research on her, and her backstory sounds very close to Charlie's, actually. Her father was of a high birth and her mother was of a low birth, and she was an illegitimate child. But what her father did was whenever he went on business endeavors or whatever, he actually dressed her up as a boy. I forget the reason why, to be honest. But so she kind of got pretty used to disguising herself as a man. And so to me, that was, and also Mary Read was an illegitimate child as well, I believe. But yes. And speaking of Anne Bonny, do you want to say what we have in store for Anne Bonny?
Well, we definitely wanted to have female pirates play a more prominent part in our sequel versus just being mentioned in the first Distant Shores. And that drinking game MC ends up playing with Anne Bonny. We do have that does tie into our sequel, and we could be friends and allies or not. I guess that's your choice.
That's your choice. Yeah. I don't think that's very spoilery because, well, I mean, at the end of Distant Shores, the curator said, "Oh yeah, MC played some sort of, met Anne Bonny." Another pirate actually that I looked up, and I think now really people say she is the greatest pirate in the world, was Ching Shi. And she was a pirate in the early 1800s that pretty much dominated the South China Sea. And again, she was of a low birth. She actually started as a prostitute. And she found her way on the ship, and I think she married a captain or something. And then when he died, they wondered, like, okay, with common people, if a man dies, the wife takes the ship. And they're like, well, shouldn't it work this way as well? Shouldn't it work for this way as well? And what she did was, I think she commanded like about 1,000 ships. Anne Bonny and Mary Read, they had unfortunate fates, but with Ching Shi, she retired pretty wealthy.
That's good for her, man. I'd love to retire wealthy.
She retired wealthy, yes. And another one that was pretty interesting that I also read up on, and I just did this last night, so this is kind of fresh in my mind. But Grace O'Malley, she was in Tudor times. I think she actually did meet Queen Elizabeth I. But something that was really badass about her was that there was a raid. I think they were being attacked, and she was giving birth. So right after she gave birth, she went off to fight.
Damn.
Yes.
That's like the definition of a badass.
That's the definition of a badass. Yeah. She's Irish. So I think there's actually even a statue of her in Ireland, because I think, of course, she wanted Ireland to be independent from Britain, of course, and I think that's probably why she met Queen Elizabeth I. I think, I forget. I forget. But yeah, so there were some very fierce female pirates, and we're glad that Charlie's one of them.
I just feel bad for like everything Charlie had, like,
yeah.
So it's like, oh, she didn't have just issues with one parent. She kind of had it from like both sides, because dad didn't want her, and mom was sent away, so she never had mom. So it's like, damn, poor Charlie.
Yeah, sad but good at the same time, because she got some sort of education. She lived in some sort of wealth. She could have been thrown on the streets with her mother, and Dorothea raised her pretty well.
Yeah. I think you and I had said that our theory that, Charlie's dad kept her so he could marry her into if it would help with like an alliance or something, he could marry her into a family.
Yeah, like he could probably legitimize her. He probably had the power to legitimize her. And what else about Charlie? Oh, another thing that I've noticed this, like probably maybe about like an hour before starting this podcast.
This is really fresh in the mind.
This is all so fresh. Hey, I'm getting ready for London and everything. So
Oliver's Town.
And Edstown. Ed is from Crovershire, I think. From Desire and Decorum, that was in that took place outside of London as well. But anyway, I've noticed like with Charlie, she's probably the only one that can call Ed out on his bullshit. Yeah, like when Henry threw the compass and Ed said, "Henry, you fool," and Charlie said, "No, Edward, you're the fool. You can stand around here and yell at everybody until there's a mutiny, or you can go in your cabin and have a nap."
Okay, but honestly, I would go take a nap.
I mean, yeah, like she never got the story of why Ed needs to get the Admiral, but she definitely has the power to put him in his place. And it also kind of begs the question both for Ed and Bob. Like, why are they the only two captains in the sea that would allow women on their ship? And I'm wondering now, you want to talk about fresh in my mind? I just thought about this second. I wonder if like she went up to Bob, probably said something like, you helped me out. Why did you put me on the ship? And then Bob says, "Nah, that's not good. That's not good." And then she, proves them otherwise.
That just made me think of a theory, and it's because Robert can be a douche and can be very cunning and calculating. That I feel like Robert never does anything unless he has some kind of a backup plan. I feel like Robert knew. I don't think Charlie hid the fact that she came from a little bit of a richer upbringing lifestyle. I don't think she hid that from Robert because she was pretty open about it in chapter 2 when they were playing that game. She's like, "Oh, I was born in a fancy thing, but I'd give it all up to stay here." I feel like Robert took a chance on her because he's like, you know what? She could be a real good asset to my crew, but if she ended up not, he could be like, "I got the governor's daughter. I can get a ransom and get money for her."
And also Bob is also from the future as well. So he probably, and we have a backstory for Bob.
We do, yes.
We do have a backstory for Bob. I don't want to give it away. But of course, Bob was in the time where there is some sort of equality between men and women. So he probably didn't allow women on his ship because he wanted to blend in more with the other pirates, or yes. But Charlie, they don't say it to her face twice that she's bad luck.
How can you just not love Charlie, though? She's awesome. I mean, freaking Robert had Octavia, and like I said, fuck Octavia. But Charlie, she was a great asset to the crew.
Yeah, I mean, Octavia did become his first mate. But I think I said this in the walkthrough, like that she, Octavia and Bob should just walk down the aisle. So I don't know.
Well,
maybe
in my personal fanfic, they the one I have on Webhead, they did the bump, but Robert don't end up with her. Robert's like you were just a buddy.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course. And I know, and piracy was such a male-dominated field. Of course, Charlie, Maggie, Octavia, and female MC. Okay, those were the only 4 women at sea. But with Charlie, of course, she probably knew what was expected of her, even when she, of course, left the house, and she was still destined to be a housewife. Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, she was destined to do that, to take care of the house, take care of the children, no matter if she came from wealth or poverty. That's what she was destined to do in that time. And yeah, honestly, it's kind of boring just sitting around taking care of the house and not making your own money. Not making your own money. It's pretty boring. What other theories do we have about Charlie? That, of course, PB did not want to.
PB didn't want to do anything. Let's be honest. I digress.
Well, no, don't. No, listen, no, this is our podcast. We could say what the fuck we want. I'm telling you, I'm going on Reddit, and people are. Don't get me wrong, people. It's coming up. It's coming up that people are still upset over the ending. Yeah, it's been what, 2 years since the January 2020. Yeah, 2 years since the
and this year will be 3 years since Distant Shores ended.
Yeah, and
oh my gosh, has it really been that long?
Yes, it's been that long.
I'm old.
Well, these past 3 years have been a lot for everybody.
I'm old.
I know. I know. Yeah.
But we do, with the fact that they didn't kind of really give us a lot to go off of, I think, yes, that annoyed me, but also I feel like with not only our project, but with our personal fan fictions, it did give us that freedom to go, what do we want for Charlie? What will we make her happy with? And I know you and I had her end up with Oliver, and I know not everyone likes that. Well, that's why we didn't do that for our project, but
yeah, we didn't do that for our project, but yeah, like this is, and we didn't even consult each other when we wrote our fanfics that let's put Charlie and Ollie together. No, that came up through
that great minds think alike.
Exactly. And I feel like, of course, we have the same reason why we pair Charlie and Ollie together. What's your reason? Why do you pair Charlie and Ollie together?
So I actually I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one. I was watching it with Brian, and Brian can be a troll when he wants to be. And I'm sitting there just like doodling ideas for my fanfic, and the part in the very beginning where like the Commodore like wants to propose to Elizabeth, and she like falls off the thing in her heavy dress. And
I know I haven't seen Pirates of the Caribbean in 20 years, but yes,
you need to watch it though, because it's good. And,
yes, I remember.
And Brian looks over and he goes, "Why don't you just put Charlie and Oliver together? Because it'd be like a Commodore and a governor's daughter." And I looked at, and I ended up throwing a pillow at him because he made me mad. And then I kind of like was like, maybe he had a point, because like, if she did stay being raised in like upper class society, someone of Oliver's rank would actually be someone that she kind of would be pushed to end up with.
Yeah.
But also with the fact that they both they like would balance each other out. He's more serious, she's more playful, and she would kind of bring that out of him. But also the fact that they both bond over the sad fact that both their dads kind of suck, but they're afraid to show that vulnerability with anyone else. They could show it with each other because they would get it, and no one else would get it like they would.
Exactly.
So that's why I put them together.
Yeah, exactly. I do that too. With Ollie, of course, yes, if she was legitimized, yes, that's somebody who she would probably marry. But the thing is with Ollie, I would feel like he would also be kind of intrigued. Like he says, oh, a woman that grew up educated and in wealth acts like this. It's the classic case of I've never met somebody like you.
And I like it.
Met a woman like you. Exactly. Like that's the thing. Yeah. I say this a lot. Every man wants a different woman until they got a different woman. But in our fan fiction, they work very well.
They did.
Work very well.
And then Brian was like, "Yay, you used my idea."
Yes. In my fan fiction, of course, Ed and MC have nicknames for each other, Miss Bellamy and my captain. And Charlie, I mean, she did call him this in, I think, the last chapter of DS, but she did call him Navy Boy. You know, you're the one with the education, Navy Boy. You read it. So in my fan fiction, she calls him Navy Boy, and he calls her Lady Charlotte.
That's actually, he would though.
He would call her Lady Charlotte. He would. He would. So even sometimes, like I say, I even call her Lady Charlotte as well. You know, it's something, if you ever watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's a character, Toph, who, yes, she grew up very wealthy. And there was this an episode where they had to disguise themselves in a high class party. And one of the characters said, you know, you're not fancy. You know, you're not fancy. And she says, you're right. I learned proper society and chose to leave it behind. I feel like Charlie's like that. She learned proper behavior, but she chose to leave it behind because it didn't work for her. She wanted to do what the men were doing. So, you know.
I would honestly probably be the same, though. I've never been like a manner girly girl.
No.
I mean, you know, people do you for all you out there, be yourself. It's just,
I know
that didn't work out for me.
So of course with Charlie, a lot of men would probably say like, oh my God, you know, a woman doing this, you know, a woman doing a man's job.
And we'd say to them, you uncultured swine.
You won't go. I would say, and you think you can do a woman's job, push out a child? That's what I imagine her saying. And that's what I imagine her saying. Like, I imagine Charlie probably saying, oh, you think you know, you could do my job as a woman, push out a child? Even though Charlie never did. But something, I don't know. I always imagine Charlie, because I know this case with Anne Bonny and Mary Read, they had to be tougher than the men. They had to be. So I feel like it's only natural for Charlie to say, to put all of these men in their place. You know? I mean, she was able to put Ed in his place.
Go take a nap.
Go take a nap, or you can stand around and yell until there's another mutiny. That is power. That is fucking power. But yes, I definitely do imagine if a man came up to Charlie and say, you can't do a man's job. And then she says, oh, you can't do the job that I was destined to do, and that is push out a child.
That's what I think is so sad, though, that like now, like we're in 2023, and there is still people that have that mindset of women can't do this job, men can't do that job. Like, you know what? Let people do whatever job they want and let them be happy.
And it's still, I faced it. I'm too young to be divorced, and I'm too old to never be married. Either way, I'm damaged goods. So I just imagine myself like, oh my God, what if I was like that in Charlie's time? But it exists. I mean, it's probably not as poignant as it was in the 18th century, but let me tell you, it still exists. And yeah, so in my fan fiction, if I ever get it done, I mean, if I ever get it done, I do want to do like flashbacks, because at this point, I'm going to make it into an original work. But I do want to write, of course, that, MC met Ed when she was 31. I was 31 when DS came. Actually, I was actually 30. I was like maybe a week away from turning 31, but when I met Ed. But anyway, but yeah, she's 31. She's not married. She has no children. And Ed and Bob are like the only pirates that allow women on their ship, and I want to explain like why would Ed allow women on his ship? And I'm wondering if he would probably say either, well, I see value in them, or I grew up with a single mother that had to do everything, or or simply, well, Charlie put a knife to my throat and said that I shouldn't say she's bad luck.
You're gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today. I know. So if I ever get that done and published, but I do imagine, of course, Charlie in this modern day climate for women. Of course, there are still, as I said before, there are still struggles that we do have, but they're definitely not like in her time. I mean, we're allowed to vote. We're allowed to vote. I mean, the only place she was allowed to vote on was a pirate ship. But yeah. And of course she can have a career, and if she wants, she can raise children and have a career, and of course everybody would look at her like, oh, she's this amazing thing, oh, she can balance a career, she can balance a husband, she can balance, or wife and do it all. And I definitely think Charlie would do it. I definitely think Charlie could do it. Ed and Ollie, and I wrote this, of course, in my fan fiction, I think they would still maybe have a little bit of an adjustment to do. With Ed, of course, like, he will view MC, and I said this in my fan fiction, and I'm glad I didn't get so much hate for it, but like, he viewed MC as a wife. He viewed her as a captain, but when they were alone, she was his wife. So of course she was only allowed to do wife things, which is just stay home and take, and listen to him. So when they go into the future, of course, he's very taken off. Like, if she's going to work, or if she wears a dress that maybe is a little too low cut, maybe, wears a bikini, like, he has some adjustment to do. But Charlie, oh my God, Charlie would love it. Charlie would love it. And she'd be so happy that she would have a man that is totally fine with it. Oh, I actually maybe would want a man that actually wants her to have a job, wants her to wear whatever she wants to wear, wants her to choose when she wants to have a child or not. So, oh, she would love it.
She would.
She would. I mean, we can hold power now these days. I mean, she was in a high position on Ed's ship. She was a quartermaster. I mean, to me, that kind of sounded like, it's captain, first mate, quartermaster. She leads the charge. Yeah, she leads. I think she said she leads the charge when in a raid. Men follow her. Men follow her into a raid. There was in chapter 8. There was a raid. I mean, it was a diamond option, but yeah, you did follow Charlie. But at the end, Ed was the one that decides what happens to the ship that they're raiding and everything like that. So that's got to be a lot of power. It's got to be a lot of power for a woman to have. And Maggie does too. And Maggie does too. Maggie, I mean, a boatswain. She's not the one just scrubbing the deck. I mean, if somebody goes overboard, she's the one tying the knot and rescuing somebody, And then, of course, we have Ginny. How can we forget Ginny? I guess probably because she's still a girl, but how can I forget Ginny throughout this entire? I feel so bad.
Well, she's a little girl, but she's been through a lot.
She's been through a lot.
She's a strong little girl.
Oh, she's strong, and she's another one that puts Ed in his place too. She's another.
Oh my gosh, yes! When MC jumps overboard and saves Jenny, and Ed's yelling at MC, and Jenny's like, "Don't you yell at them! They saved me!"
Yeah, MC saved me. You were not only, and she demanded him to apologize,
and he did.
He puts his finger in his chest and he looks down and he's like, oh my God, this little girl is. And she even said when, I think in chapter 15, when they were going to the portal, just because I'm small doesn't mean that I can't fight. And she also, I mean, I know this was a diamond option, but she did, I mean, with your help, of course, she did convince Jonas to stay. But she did at least talk back to Jonas, even if you didn't choose the diamond option to keep him. She did.
Honestly, though, the fact that was paywalled, though, not only saving Ginny was paywalled, but also the fact of getting Jonas to stay was paywalled, that pissed me off so much because Ginny had already lost her parents, and then you were going to take away her adoptive dad too. I'm like, stop paywalling that crap.
Exactly.
That actually made me really mad.
I know that really, I think anything that happens to a child, of course, makes people pissed off. And I know when we did our survey way back, the number one thing that people, when I asked, what did you have in the captain's cabin? The majority of the people did say Ginny, because who wants to let a child drown? Nobody wants to let a child drown. Yeah. And she's a tough child too. She's a good and tough child. And I know in my fan fiction, I do probably show the hardest thing that a man would do when raising a daughter, and that is, of course, Ginny has a little friend come every month now. So, of course, she looked down and she saw what was happening. And, of course, she thought she was dying. And then MC was like, Jonas never told you what happens to your body?
Well, I don't think Jonas would know how to go about doing that, because he also strikes me as a first-time parent and probably didn't even know that probably happened.
Yeah, and it exactly, yeah. And of course, MC gets Charlie and Maggie together, and she's like, okay, don't worry, this happens. I get it, Charlie gets it, Maggie gets it, this is what you do. And then Ed gets a little annoyed with Jonas because he's like, why didn't you tell her this, when this is happening? And Ed, of course, doesn't know what to do. don't
I
know.
was like, no one knows what to do. Nobody's supposed to say they fucking suck. They
No.
fucking suck.
They don't know what to do. You can't. So it had to be hard for Ed. It had to be hard for Ed to have women on his show, and maybe even Bob as well, because these things do happen. We get it. It's just part of our natural. It's part of our natural way of living. We get these things,
And they suck.
And they suck. I always imagine, like, when I was young, and this saying is true. Like, when I first entered, let's just fucking say what it is. It's a fucking period. Why am I dancing around that word? It's a period, okay? It's a fucking period. When I first got mine, my mother actually did say to me, if you live with other women long enough, they do sync up. And it's true. And I just imagine, like, Charlie, female MC, Maggie, and maybe Ginny, at least in my fan fiction, all have it at the same time. And it's like, can men take it? Can you guys take it? Can you guys, because, we hate it. We hate it more than you. That's what I would love to say to a man. You think I enjoy this? So yeah, I do imagine that, like, why, how Ed would deal with it. And also in our sequel, of course, for the, because Ollie is a love interest. So he, of course, joins the crew. That's how he and MC meet up again. I always imagine Ollie trying to adjust with women on the ship, because he's the guy that did grow up in that culture where this is a man's job. Or women are bad luck on the ship. And I always wondered, like, okay, how would Ollie deal with it? Where, at least on Ed's ship and Ed and Bob's ship, doesn't matter what's between your legs. It matters if you can do the job. So, Ollie has a lot of things going on with him because he's leaving behind he's leaving behind a very sexist world. And he comes to Ed's ship where, well, it's not so sexist. but yes. Anything else to say?
I'm pretty good. Charlie rocks. We love her.
Well, and so I guess we can wrap up this podcast. We do want to say, we apologize if we isolated any men, but it's our month. It's our month. Let's be proud to be women, and let's celebrate the strong women, not only in our lives or in history, but even in fictional. So we celebrate Charlie, we celebrate Maggie, Octavia.
We do not. We celebrate Ginny, not Octavia.
Well, with Octavia, hey, we give her credit for doing a man's job. But do we celebrate her? No. We give her credit for doing the work that men can do. But do we celebrate her? No. But for all the other women out there in the DS universe, we thank you.
Keep being awesome.
We'll see everybody later then.